Hey friends, this is Dan and Stephanie Burke, Divine Intimacy Radio. You're watching Behind the Scenes, and I'm looking something up for the show. And because I want to tell you about it before we jump in. Today we're going to be talking about, we don't usually dig into the realm of politics, but because, last few elections have been pretty challenging, we decided to do one show on the topic, at least one show directly on voting, ethics, morals, pro-life, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it, of course, affects our spiritual life because...
Well, it's an outgrowth of our spiritual life, too.
Right.
Yeah.
So before we jump into the show, and by the way, if you are a pro-life voter, and pro-life is the preeminent issue for you, which it should be for every Catholic, and I mean related to abortion, I'd ask you to share this show as we're live streaming on EWTN's Facebook page. Share it like crazy. That would be really helpful. So before we jump in, we are going to be in North Dakota, Stephanie and I, on February 14th through the 16th. And we're telling all of our friends, and we want you to know too, that there will be a powerful event called Divine Intimacy and Marriage in North Dakota.
Yeah.
We just did one in Trinidad, which was just extraordinary.
Yeah. The just the fruit of it is remarkable.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I was incredibly impressed with the men in Trinidad.
Yeah.
You know, the effect on the men. So
yeah.
It's awesome.
We had some great testimonies about guys stepping up and becoming the spiritual leader of their homes.
Yeah, I had women that were coming up and hugging me and telling me they loved me because of the effect that was
on their guys,
on their husbands.
And that doesn't mean we're focused on beating up on the guys. Both.
No. It's a call to arms for both sides.
Yeah.
And a call to true, authentic, holy matrimony and what that looks like. But
right. So to head out to SpiritualDirection.com /events, and you can find wherever, everywhere we're going to be.
And if you know folks in that area, share it with them, because we don't know when we'll get back to that area, but it's powerful.
Yeah.
So
please let people know. All right. And let's go and jump. Before we jump in, the last thing I want to say before we jump into the show, EWTN, and I've said this before, I just don't think it could be said enough. Without EWTN and a handful, and I mean Mother Angelica in particular, but EWTN being her legacy, without Mother Angelica, Fulton Sheen, and a handful of others, the United States would be closer to Germany, I think, in faith.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be a much worse mess than it is. So please make sure you're supporting EWTN. We're grateful to be a part of EWTN and able to broadcast this show. And so please make sure you give them your support. And you ready to jump in?
Yeah.
Okay, on your mark, set, go. This is Dan and Stephanie Burke. Welcome to Divine Intimacy Radio, your radio haven of rest,
your hermitage of the heart,
your monastery of the mind, where we lift our hearts and minds to heaven to draw upon the wisdom of the saints to help us navigate the tumult of this life. And of course, most of the time, Divine Intimacy Radio is about the interior life. Today, we're talking about the effects of the interior life,
right?
And as it relates to voting. So what's up with the hat?
Oh, I was really grateful because I actually voted this morning.
Yeah,
we did. We were there. I think we were the sixth person in line, sixth and seventh. So I put my sticker. I voted on here.
Yeah.
And so since this is the theme today, here I am.
Here you are.
I am in red, white, and blue. I am pro-American, pro-Jesus first.
And I'm in brown, brown, and brown.
Well, yeah, I don't know why you didn't wear a white shirt at least and put your sticker on, but you didn't even pick up a sticker, and I know you voted.
I did.
So,
I did.
Anyway.
So, there are two ways people are going to catch this show. One is, of course, right now live streaming on EWTN's Facebook page and on our various pages. Another will be EWTN radio afterward. So if you're thinking, why am I hearing a show and the election is over, because it takes a while to get to terrestrial radio, the show, we're going to be talking about things that are beyond the election.
Yeah.
So the election is, of course, very important today, the day we're recording, but the implications long term are really important. And I think I wanted to say, stay tuned, because we're headed into some waters that we have not seen in the United States and most people are not ready for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, it's not just about the election today. It's about post election. Yeah. Like, we don't know the outcome right now when we're recording this.
Yeah.
We're praying for a holy outcome, as holy as it can be.
Yeah.
But either way, our interior life, the way we look at all of this will affect how we react, how we live on after the election.
Sure.
Especially here in the United States.
Yeah. And there are problems really on the winning side and on the losing side. Yeah. Whether how you look at things and live out your faith, it's pretty important, because I think we got to shift gears.
Yeah.
So the other day, or yesterday, I should say, I was listening to Lila Rose. Big fan of hers, by the way.
Lovely woman.
Yeah.
All around.
New baby, which is exciting for them. These folks are my heroes, really. I used to work for the most pro-life and influential pro-life organization in the world, evangelical, called Focus on the Family, when I was first converted to the faith. And so I've been involved in the pro-life movement, if you will, since then, but not directly, more as somebody who just lends the voice to it. Because I do care very much, but our work is mostly about getting people's hearts to the place where they can make these right decisions. Mm-hmm. So there's people who are more about, okay, now we have to make a decision. How should it go? And we're working on configuring the heart to Jesus so that they can be receptive. So we're all on the same team. It's just different points in the playing field, if that makes sense. Right. So I was always, I don't know, something about Lila, David Delight, and just a few people in the movement that are really moving to me in the way they deal with
so much courage.
Yeah, courage and ingenuity.
Right.
I remember years ago when they were calling abortion clinics, and I think one of the most striking things I ever heard, and I think this was under Lila's direction, where you have somebody calling Planned Parenthood and saying, I'd like to pay. I'd
like to donate.
It was a white person saying, I'd like to donate, but just for black babies, just to kill black babies. Is that possible? You remember that?
Yeah, no, I remember. And they said it, yes. They said yes. And it was horrifying. The whole thing was so horrifying. And of course, we know the original, the start of Planned Parenthood.
Right.
Was all
Margaret Sanger.
Yeah.
Eugenics.
It's
getting rid of black people, basically,
right.
was the initial.
Right. Or any undesirables.
Sure. Right? Any undesirables in her definition of undesirable.
Right.
Not undesirable to us, obviously.
No, but obviously it was by her definition. And so it's just such a horrifying thing. And that it's, that it's turned into some sort of reproductive right, I put in quotes.
Yeah.
Or, it's gone so far, and the gaslighting has gone so far that they've just really brainwashed so many people. And I think it's very unfortunate, because we love both mother and child.
Right.
We need to find solutions to help them not kill off children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so what Lila did that I listened to was she explained her position, which I think is exemplary in its how measured it is, how clear it is on this election, because there are problems in this election. Mm-hmm. I think if I were to give an overarching guidance, on the election, it would be, Cardinal Burke is the one who summed it up best. Vote for the one who will prevent the most evil.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, genius, because I've heard, people talking about the lesser of evils, and legitimate voices who I don't agree with will say, well, a lesser of evil is still an evil. Okay. So it flipped that whole argument on its head when he said, vote for the one who will prevent the most evil.
Mm-hmm.
And the most grave evil in our time is, in terms of in the social sphere, in terms of the lives of people, is the killing of unborn babies in the wombs of their mothers. This is the most grave evil of our time.
Yeah.
And so what I want to do is I want to walk through her statement and talk about it a little bit, so that just in case, our show isn't typically about these things. And, we want you, if you kind of try to avoid the abortion issue, the pro-life issue, or whatever, I really want to challenge you. And it's why we're using this channel, which is normally just dedicated to the interior life. Really want to challenge you to just sit and face it with us, just for a show or two. We get to a second show, and deal with it, because it's really, really, really important.
Yeah.
All right. So she begins, and we'll go a little bit back and forth. So this is a little more interesting. She begins her statement with, Lila Rose has opposed both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's positions on abortion over the last few months, but she will be voting for Donald Trump. And so why? And she says, the single most important issue when choosing who to vote for is, of course, what we've said, which is life. If you don't have the right to live, there are no other rights matter. I think it was John Paul II said something to that effect. So human life is sacred at every phase, at conception.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts in the womb. And, abortion is the intentional destruction of a preborn child and the leading cause of death in America. Nearly 3,000 children daily. 3,000 children.
That should make everybody weep.
It's hard to actually even talk about.
That alone. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so the dilemma is that she points out is when both main political parties have anti-life policies, how do you deal with that?
Right.
And I think she's done a great job. So we're going to start with Harris's positions, and why don't you cover that, at least the first portion, and maybe I'll hit the second one.
Okay. So Harris was the Attorney General of California, and she selectively prosecuted pro-life journalists who exposed Planned Parenthood selling body parts, which is a federal crime. At the time, she was accepting money from Planned Parenthood for her then Senate campaign. So insanity.
Right.
So she's receiving money from Planned Parenthood, and then she's prosecuting the journalists who are exposing Planned Parenthood selling body parts. She also used her power as Attorney General to attempt to force pro-life pregnancy nonprofits in California to post abortion advertisements in their clinics. She said she would pass federal legislation codifying Roe, which would legalize abortion on demand without restriction and supersede all life-saving pro-life laws at the state level.
So pretty clearly aggressively anti-life and anti those who are attempting to bring, she wants to silence and manipulate those who are on the other side. She opposes conscience exceptions for healthcare professionals, meaning, that she would force healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, to participate in abortions or abortion-related activities like the pill and that sort of thing, along with opposing all abortion restrictions. So and of course she supports taxpayer-funded abortion. So disturbingly, Harris has made unfettered support for abortion a central tenet of her campaign.
It is the central tenet.
Yeah.
It's I'm not Trump, and come and so that you can abort your babies wherever you want.
And she's the first candidate ever to tour an abortion clinic as a kind of publicity stunt to say how pro-death she is.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Oof.
So Harris's campaign is spreading massive disinformation about abortion, claiming miscarriage treatments are banned in pro-life states, what they're not, blaming abortion-related deaths on pro-life laws. The recurring message, nearly every interview and speech, is an unflinching support. So she, and then Lila goes on to say, Kamala Harris, if fascism is the alignment of all power to the state, Kamala Harris is a model abortion fascist, and I think that's a good summary.
Okay, so she's.
Oh, we actually have to, when we get back from the break.
Okay.
We'll continue to dive into this topic and hopefully help you and family members get clarity if you've been unclear about how we should vote now. But also, this message, it's important to note, is critical for moving forward, because there's a big shift happening that we're going to talk about here that we need to be ready for. It's already happening, but I just don't think people are psychologically ready. So when we get back from the break, we'll continue to talk about the greatest moral, social evil of our time. Okay. And we'll be right back. Welcome back to Divine Intimacy Radio. This is Dan and Stephanie Burke, and we're talking about the greatest moral, social evil in our time.
That's right.
And that is abortion, the killing of babies in their wombs, or the destruction of embryos. And
what comes to mind is like what is the obsession about? What is the obsession about? And I think if we can understand that it is truly demonic, the killing of the most innocent child in utero, why are they so bloodthirsty about that? And I think if you look at the demonic element, the Lord himself came in the womb,
baby. Yeah,
in the womb of an unwed mother.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the irony shouldn't miss anyone at this point.
Right.
And they want to attack those children. They want them dismembered. They want them killed to prevent, in their minds, or as like retribution, retaliation. I don't know that anybody on the pro-abortion side would say that, but any Satanists would.
Right.
They would say, yes,
they would admit it.
They would admit it. They would say, we hate Jesus. We hate the church. We hate God. Therefore, we hate all babies, all babies. And
unless they can be used, well, of course, then they hate them because they're using them for things unspeakable.
Well, it doesn't matter. It's this attack on the most innocent life ever, which was Jesus. Yeah. That's ultimately at its core, where he came to say, this is my body. The abortion mantra is my body, my choice.
Yeah.
Right. And there is no sacrificial giving. It's the taking of life.
Yeah.
So I just want to admit that out loud. I want us to say that.
And I don't, here's an important thing. If we have somebody listening who's had an abortion, this is not a condemnation for that person. In fact, there is forgiveness in Christ.
Right.
For you.
And healing. There are beautiful ministries
Rachel's
in the
Vineyard
church.
is the one that comes to
mind.
mind.
And Grief to Grace and some others that really can focus on that. I mean, I've loved and prayed with people to bring about healing from their own post-abortive issues and suffering and woundings. So it's not a condemnation, but we must look beyond this horror, and start to think, how can we help the tide change?
Let's shift now to the Republican issues.
Okay.
So for a long time, decades, the Republican platform has included the right to life. But an apparent effort to swing voters and moderates, President Trump's allies and the Republican Party platform gutted the Republican Party platform of its pro-life and pro-marriage principles, what his campaign has chosen instead is a path that prioritizes supposed political convenience over fundamental rights. So several weeks ago, J.D. Vance said that he and Trump support access to abortion pills, which account for over 60% of abortions. Do you want to explain why abortion pills are actually abortion? I mean, why? Yeah, I guess it says abortion pills is abortion. But
right. Well, there's two things going on here. Well, the abortion pills are abortion pills.
Right.
So it's the morning after.
Right.
Or,
so there's been a conception.
Or yes,
and there's a baby in the womb.
So the moment that the sperm and egg come together,
right.
a life is created.
Right.
And we believe as Catholics, we know that the soul is infused at that instant.
Right.
So life is created. The abortion pill comes in afterwards and says, oh, oops, I'm going to take this.
Right.
And so it's going to change the conditions of the uterus of the woman so that the sperm and egg, the child, cannot then, the embryo, the child cannot then implant itself in the lining of the mother's uterus.
Right.
So the conditions have changed. And so they actually can't grab on. And so they're flushed out, you know. So that's the abortion pill. There are contraceptives that do basically the same thing. It's changing the condition of the uterus so that the child cannot survive.
So there's approximately 2,000 children a day are killed by abortion pills. 1 out of every 25 women who use abortion pills will end up in the hospital with complications. They're dangerous for women and deadly for the children they kill.
Right.
And Trump has announced support for taxpayer-funded IVF.
Yeah, this is a separate issue.
Right? Yeah, in addition to being incredibly expensive, anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000 per child, IVF is incredibly risky for women, and every IVF-created embryo that survives to the point that he or she can be implanted, many of his or her embryonic siblings are callously discarded for perceived imperfection. So
they can be discarded, indefinitely frozen.
We're harvesting babies, dismissing babies.
We're creating babies, actually.
Right.
We're creating. So we're taking the eggs.
Yeah.
We're taking the sperm from a donor or the father.
Yeah.
And they're brought together to create a life. And then they're kept frozen until they can be implanted into the womb of the mother. And so those children are discarded. If they're imperfect, they're discarded. If they don't take root, they're going to be discarded. I mean, the whole process is abortive. And, I think, listen, I have worked and loved and served and prayed with a number of women who have had infertility issues or actually did IVF. And at the time, they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't understand.
For a child.
Yes, a desperate desire, and the desire is not a problem.
Right.
It's the method through which, and there's a lack of, a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
A lot of things of understanding, the suffering that we have to go through on either side. So
IVF turns children into commodities. And property be created, used, trashed at will.
And even fought over through divorce proceedings.
It's crazy.
Which has made public news before, which is just terrible.
So another element of bad news. And again, we support Trump.
I voted for Trump today.
I did too. And so did Lila Rose. But we're just talking about problems in the platform. This is, the election will be over and what will be. But this is the reality. So Trump also supported exceptions in the cases of rape and incest, and are opposing a national abortion ban. They say that abortion should be left to at state level. And then Trump has criticized and undermined pro-life state laws, such as Florida's heartbeat law. So obviously this is for political expedience. And I will be honest with you, I don't like it. But I don't think it's possible for them to be elected without broadening the tent of the Republican Party. Right. And this is just the reality where we are, and we have to deal with it.
Yeah. And unfortunately, politics is ugly and it's messy.
Yeah.
And there's never a perfect candidate. Melania even came out with her memoirs, I believe, her book,
Mhm.
in which Trump encouraged her to express her pro-abortion stance.
Right.
It's hard to stomach
Yeah.
to watch a beautiful, striking woman, veiled, praying in front of a Blessed Mother, and then write in her memoir that she supports abortion.
It's crazy.
It's this placing compassion, I think, over morality.
Yeah, and there's this issue that Lila, I think, manages to deal with very well. One is, yes, I'm going to vote this way, but the other is, this isn't acceptable.
Right.
So she says, but there is no middle ground when it comes to life. Every child, no matter how he or she is conceived, has a right to be given a chance at life. Every abortion intends to end the life of a child. Either there is a right to life or there isn't. Abortion is not a states' rights issue. Abortion is a human's rights issue, and it is already unconstitutional under the 14th Amendment, which declares that no state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. The goal of the pro-life movement is that every person from fertilization until natural death has their right to life protected by law and embraced by culture.
Right.
So, and then she goes on to say, to his credit, of course, he appointed 3 Supreme Court justices, which overturned Roe versus Wade. And the historically, the Republican Party has actually had the ability to solve this problem. Trump was the first one who actually did it and solved it, and deserves credit for that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I were a betting woman, I would think this is more about his handlers, his strategists, and everything looking at this and going, okay, if we're completely pro-life, we're going to lose. We're going to lose. It's more important for us to get into office and then do what we can to get our country moving in the right direction. So I think that's what's going on, but again, who knows,
on the good news side, because of Lila's position and her influence, she got a meeting with the president about this and expressed her concerns. God be praised. And that's what we should be doing. She states that some progress was made because of the meeting and because of the outrage expressed by the pro-life community.
Well, he listened to her for 2 hours.
Right.
That in of itself,
that's a big deal.
It's a big deal because he said, by that action, he's saying, I care about this issue and I want to listen to your voice. Because otherwise he would have said, you got 30 minutes, and shifted her out.
So we're running out of time and we haven't even finished the discussion. But I think just to conclude this show, get out to vote today. Vote for the party, and there's only one party that falls under this category, that will prevent the most evil.
Yeah.
That will prevent the most evil, of course. And, recognize that as you do vote that way, that it's still a problem. And it's a problem we're going to have to deal with in this administration and the future administrations. We don't know how the election's going to go.
The fight's not going to be over. The fight's not going to be over.
We're not even close.
Right.
Not even close.
Yeah.
All right. So why don't you take us out, head out to Lila Rose's organization, and to get more information, you can look her up on the web. Liveaction.org.
Yeah.
And make sure you support them as well, because they're doing very powerful work. And we will continue this conversation and do a second show on this topic and dig a little bit more into, okay, what next?
Yeah, what next? It's important. We need to continue this conversation. So until next time, may the God of peace make you perfect in holiness. May he preserve you whole and entire, spirit, soul, and body, irreproachable at the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.